Listen to this. That is not the sound of a professional lens because this is a cheap budget prime lens. They don't actually make this one anymore, but different camera manufacturers all have something similar. Prices and focal lengths may change.
It represents fast prime lenses at the budget end of the market.
And yes, the image quality isn't amazing, but if you plan ahead, you can actually get pretty good images with this lens. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and the lens I'm using is a classic Canon 50mm f1.8. Now, it's that 1.8 that I'm interested in, so I'm going to make sure that that is my aperture. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's not the sharpest place to use any lens wide open, but I've got a trick to really overcome that, and I'll do that at the end of this video. But for now, let's see if we can get control of the room lights. So I've dialed in 200th of a second flash sync speed for this camera, f1.8 obviously, and ISO 200. Now, normally we do the no flash, no picture, but at those settings, I'm gonna see quite a bit of Chloe coming through. Now, I could use high-speed sync flash if I had a transmitter that was compatible with this Canon camera, but I don't. So, what am I gonna use? I'm gonna use these ND filters. This will do the same job, just with less technology. The 1.8 aperture is really only doing one thing for me, shallow depth of field. So if that's the goal you want to achieve, there are some tips and tricks you can do to maximize that effect. Let's start with the background, because a plain white wall looks the same in focus and out of focus. You need a bit of texture in the background. So I've got this as my background, and if I take a picture of Chloe like this, well, let's see how it goes. I mean, there is a shallow depth of field there, but you're really struggling to see any of it at all because Chloe is very close to the background. To get that maximum depth of field look, we actually need a gap between Chloe and the background. Now, how much of a gap is going to depend on a whole bunch of variables, but let's just say to Chloe, take a good step forward for me. Now, if Chloe steps forwards, obviously I need to move the light because now it's not on Chloe at all. I'm going to put the light to the same distance, which is roughly one international Chloe's arm's length away, so about there. That should give me the correct exposure. Watch what happens to the background in this case. Same background, same lighting. The background is slightly darker, but it's also less in focus. The more gap you have between your subject and the background, the blurrier the background will become. So if that works, I've got a bit more space in this studio, so Chloe, just take another little baby step forward for me. That's about as far away as I want to move Chloe from the background. I'm going to bring the light, again, we can measure it with Chloe's arm, so it's the same distance away. That means I don't have to re-meter, and this should give me just a little bit more control of the background, both blurry and also a little darker. And a darker background is great because that means I can add in some light later on. There's another factor that will influence the blurriness of the background or the depth of field you get, and that is you, how close or far you are away from your subject. So if I go in really close to Chloe, let's come in very, very close, something like that, I'm going to get the maximum blur both on Chloe and the background compared to if I step backwards, and the further away I go, something like that, well, I'm going to run out of background, but we can zoom in. This time, same lens, same distance from the background, but if you go in close, you can see that the background is less blurred than it was when I physically moved in closer. However, this is only a 50mm lens. There are compromises to having the cheapest lens you can get your hands on, and one of them is it's not the ideal portrait focal length. That's more like an 80mm. So I don't want to actually go this close if I can avoid it. So I'm going to be around about this distance away. I can always zoom in a little bit in post, and that should give me a nice balance between distance of subject and blurriness of the background. Take a few pictures and find out your own best spot. And then there is a bit of posing guidance I can give to Chloe. Now I know I want to maximize the appearance of a shallow depth of field. If Chloe is sort of square onto me like this, I'm going to get a perfectly good picture which has a shallow depth of field in the background, but if I just do one little change to Chloe's pose, just turn a little away from me. Now, when I look at Chloe, I can see a longer line from shoulder to shoulder. More depth means I will get that impression of more depth of field. And that is just a little way of emphasizing that shallow depth of field look that I get at the 1.8 aperture. A downside of using one of the cheapest lenses you can get your hands on, particularly when you put an ND filter in front, the focusing may be a little bit slow. Let's be optimistic and polite. So there are a few things you can do. The first one is to use any kind of face or eye detect if your camera has it, or if it doesn't, use a small single point and put it over your model's eye. You can also, if you're really struggling, use the modeling lamp if your light has a good one. But remember that no flash, no picture thing earlier on? Double check that this doesn't ruin that. So now we've got the basics sorted out, we can start to think about the lighting for this particular look. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. We're going to use two lights, but the first light, the key light, I'm not actually going to use this strip box. If I use this, it looks okay, but I'm looking for a directional soft light. So I'm going to replace this good sized strip box with this enormous softbox. Again, if you want to know exactly what I'm using, check out the gear links down below. They'll take you back to Adorama. As always, don't try and put your softbox on your light. Always put your light on your softbox. It sounds like it's going to take you longer in the long run, but in fact, it's much quicker. So the basic setup is this. One large softbox just out of frame and on about a 45-degree angle. I've got Chloe sat down because she's not going to move throughout this look. And also I've got an apple box on the floor. Now that's there for Chloe's feet because Chloe is going to lean in towards me. So if you want to put your feet on there, lean in towards me. That helps to elongate her shoulders once more and give us that extra depth of field look. So let's see how this goes. I've already taken a rough and ready photo and hopefully this should feel pretty good. We can see that depth of field working really nicely. I've turned Chloe's shoulders away from the main light, which has put them into shadow, and where you see shadow, that's an opportunity to add your own light. And that light's going to go around the back. So I've got a Flashpoint Evolve 200 Pro Mark II. It's also on 1/8 power. I don't know if that's the right power setting or not, but that's where we're going to start. And this light is going to be a double light source. It's going to put a little bit of light on Chloe's shoulders and the top of her head where it was a bit of shadow, but also throw a little bit of light on the background. Remember earlier where we talked about the distance from the background affecting how bright it was? There was some planning in that. So that's what it's going to do. Now, to see how this actually works, it's really important that you do one light at a time. And it looks like this. And then all I need to do is just turn on the main light, and the two lights together look like this. This is a black mist filter. It's a half black mist filter. And because this isn't the sharpest lens in the world, especially wide open, this is the perfect tool for the job. It allows a softness to the pictures, which is sort of naturally there with this budget lens, but now it becomes a deliberate thing. So I think we should take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Here we go.
At the beginning I mentioned planning ahead, and for me, with this lens, that means working to, and sometimes around, the limits of what it can actually do. But it also means that I have to accept that occasionally, this lens won't do what I really want it to. Got one final touch for this setup, and it's something that's going to make these images less static and a little more breezy.
there's a really good reason the cheapest lens for your camera is the cheapest lens. In this case, it's really slow to focus, and even when it is actually in focus, it's not that sharp. But you know what? It still works, and as long as you plan ahead, you can get some great pictures. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or you got any questions, then go down to the bottom, leave us a comment, give it a thumbs up, and whilst you're there, why not click on that subscribe button? I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.